All right, hi guys. So, having some tech issues, but we're making it work. So this is week 3 of Countdown to Christmas. And today we are going to be talking about joy. And when it comes to Christmas, on TV, on social media, anywhere in our community, you can see that people are very excited about the holiday season. Everywhere you look, there's Christmas lights, there's smiles, there's acts of kindness, all sorts of things. Great amount of excitement and joy because Christmas is a time for us to remember the birth of Jesus. So think through, what is your favorite thing about the holiday season? Is it the presents, the cookies, the time with your family, the break from school, which sign me up, I'm all about that. What's that one thing that really you're looking forward to every year? For me, it's a couple of things, like all of Christmas put together. Um, and it's being off of school and it's having snow, so I'm a little disappointed that white Christmas doesn't look super possible. And it's sitting inside and making those, like rolling out the dough and cutting out Christmas cookies and then frosting them. It's like a whole process. All of that I just really, really love when all the presents are still wrapped and the tree is up and we're all just kind of waiting for Christmas and eating delicious cookies. So that's my favorite. Um, Maybe your favorite is different than mine. Maybe it's more specific. I know mine is kind of just all of it. But um, when that first snow falls, when the tree's decorated, when we're watching our favorite holiday movie, when family comes and they finally get there, when we experience that feeling, everyone seems to be talking about at Christmas, that is joy. So maybe joy isn't a word used that often. I think outside of Christmas, a lot of times we hear happiness. And happiness and joy, they feel similar, but they're actually two very different things. Happiness is what we feel in response to something, right? It's a reaction to our circumstances. Something good happens and you're happy. You get a present you want for Christmas, you're happy. You get a good grade, you're happy. Your parents let you hang out with your friends later than usual, you're happy. And that happiness is great, but it's not joy. When we experience happiness, it's just for a moment and it's the result of something good that has happened. And when those circumstances change, that means that our happiness does as well. Joy is different, and I have something in mind that I think can show us what joy truly looks like. So this is joy, right? It's hard to think of anyone more joyful than Buddy the Elf. No matter what he was experiencing, he was still so excited and so joyful. He was just constantly joyful, even when he's making breakfast and his whole family is leaving without eating his spaghetti with syrup on it. So joy is an attitude, okay? We think of joy as an attitude that no matter what your circumstances are, you have that joy. You can experience joy in the same way as happiness. When something good happens, of course, you can be joyful about it. But the cool thing about joy is that even when not so great things happen, joy is that deeper, more lasting feeling that goes with us no matter what's going on. So if you're anything like me, when you hear that something like joy is possible, you want to do whatever you can to try to find it. Maybe you look for joy in a really cool experience, a fun vacation, a new location to make TikToks, a cool place to hang with your friends. That kind of stuff can bring a little joy. Or maybe it's an answered prayer or circumstance that works out the way you wanted. When everything feels like it falls into place, we get the good news that we've been hoping for. Maybe we look for joy in other people when we spend time with friends or have fun with family, or even with our small group when we feel like we're finding some joy in that. We can look for joy in all these things, but they actually bring moments of happiness, and at the end of the day, those moments pass. The feelings of happiness change, and just like that, we're back where we started. So what do we do? If happiness isn't enough to keep us going when things get tough, how do we find the one thing that will help us no matter what? Where do we find real, lasting joy? So, to get our answer, I want to look back at one of the most joyful times on earth, which is the birth of Jesus. It's what we count down to, it's what we celebrate each year at Christmas. His arrival really changed everything and made everything different. Jesus changed everything. The birth of Jesus was such a big deal back then. You'd think that some of the first people who heard about it would have been kings or religious leaders or like really super important people in the culture. But in reality, it was a group of shepherds who got the good news first. So why does that matter? Shepherds were the people that took care of sheep, and Even though that was a really difficult job in Jesus' culture, they weren't considered to be all that important. A lot of people looked down on them or saw them as like less than. So you can imagine everyone's surprise, including the shepherds, when angels showed up to tell them about the birth of Jesus. So in Luke 2, this is where we get our story. We get a lot of our traditional Christmas nativity story from Luke. In Luke 2, it says, what the angel said to the shepherds, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord." The angel could have said anything about the birth of Jesus, but what they said was, "I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people." Jesus' birth brought something great into the world, and that was joy. And not just joy that some people can experience, but joy for all people to experience, which is so important because the shepherds especially needed to hear that message. The rest of the world might have thought that joy would have been for people like them. The angels remind them that it was definitely for them. In fact, it was for everyone. The shepherds could have heard this and thought, "Hey, that's cool. Sounds like something that makes us happy." They could have gone right back on with their lives and moved on, but instead what they did, you got to read the rest of the story, but you find out they dropped what they were doing and they set out to go see Jesus themselves. They chose to go find and experience that great joy that the angels were talking about. They took action trying to find the joy that they've been told about. And this is exactly what we can do too. If we want to know where real and lasting joy is, the angels told us where to look, in Jesus. And if we want to experience the joy for ourselves, we have to take a tip from the shepherds and go look for it. We have to go experience it, go find it, knowing Jesus. Because of Jesus, there's always joy. It's something we can choose because Jesus, and it's something we can experience all the time when we know Jesus. We just have to be willing to look for it, even when our circumstances might make it hard to find. And maybe you're thinking like, yeah, that's easy for some people, but you have no idea what I'm going through, or, joy just isn't possible in this situation. And for sure, like some situations we go through are so difficult. And if you're going through something like that, please share with a small group leader so they can help encourage you through it. But joy is still possible for you because of Jesus. When Jesus was alive on earth, he experienced a lot of suffering and pain, and he was ultimately arrested, beaten, and killed on the cross. That path was anything but joyful, but Jesus chose it because he knew that doing so would make joy possible for us today in our circumstances. In the book of Hebrews, which was written after his death and resurrection, this is what the author says. "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." Jesus knew what was coming for him. He knew that the cross would mean the end of his physical life on earth, but he still chose to walk the hard road toward it because of the joy he knew that was on the other side, both for him and for us. Because of Jesus, there's always joy, no matter what our situation might be. It comes from understanding what God has done for us through Jesus. It's found in the gift of having a relationship with Jesus. It's something we can find when we get to know Jesus and spend time with him. It'll show up in the most unexpected places and go with us even when we experience something really difficult. It's the one thing we can always count on finding when we look for it in Jesus, because knowing Jesus changes everything. So, what does that look like for us to go to Jesus for joy, just like the shepherds did? What would it look like for you to look for and experience joy in Jesus? So, 3 things that we can remember to help us as we are looking for that joy. First, remember that God will use everything for good, even if the situation isn't. No matter what we're going through, we can have joy knowing that the one who has control over everything is using everything for good. I know a lot of us are going through some hard situations, and it might feel impossible that anything good could ever come from it. But that's the awesome part about God. We might not be able to see how God is using our situation right now in a way that's good. It might take weeks or months or years to see that good, but God promises to work for your good in every situation. To remind yourself of this, make it your lock screen or write it on your mirror or set a reminder on your phone so that it pops up daily, because it's a really good thing to keep in mind. Also, we want to remember that God promises to make everything right in the end. We can have joy because we know how the story ends. We're living in a story that has a happy ending, and this is only the beginning. The story that God is writing in your life may feel really hard or broken or painful, might feel like things aren't supposed to be this way, and chances are parts of your story will feel that way in the future too. When we go through things that are difficult, it's okay to ask questions about whether it about whatever it is that we're dealing with. And by asking those questions, we can actually get to know God more, which can help us remember that in the end, God's going to make everything right. And lastly, remember to look for joy. If we want to experience that joy ourselves, we have to do what the shepherds did and go look for it. We have to go experience it. Find it spending time with God and getting to know God more. Maybe it's taking time to pray when you need a little more joy, or maybe it's praying a prayer of thanks when you feel joy. Maybe it's spending time with people who love and believe in Jesus too. Maybe it's reading more about Jesus so you can understand more about where all this Christmas stuff started. Whatever it is for you, commit to looking for joy. So remember that because of Jesus, there is always joy. And as I wrap this up here, think through what's one thing that has brought joy to your life this year. There will be discussion questions in the details below. You can either journal through those or you can talk to a parent about them. And then I'll have one more short video for week 4.